We discussed this afternoon's massive report surrounding us being locked in with Aston Villa to reach an agreement for Jhon Duran. I'm here to make sense of this story, give my thoughts and opinions on the move, and discuss whether Jhon Duran could be an inspired signing for us, or are we continuing becoming potential FC? So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button, share your honest thoughts and opinions, and let's get straight into this video. So let's start things with the news reports first, because at the moment we are locked in talks with Aston Villa to find an agreement for Jhon Duran. Romano has confirmed this news himself as well too. Talks are currently ongoing at the moment, and this has all started because Aston Villa have now made initial contact for Conor Gallagher. Now, as we've known since January, and as we know again today, Jhon Duran is desperate to move to us. He wants the move. He's rejecting advances from Serie A, and he wants to get this deal over the line. I don't blame him, because his agent revealed actually last month that the player has always been very open to coming here. And one of the reasons why is that he was dissatisfied with game time at Aston Villa, which is, pretty interesting. But his agent revealed that regardless of whether Pochettino was set to stay or remain, he knew that our interest in the player never died down, never ended, and a move could happen regardless, right? Now, a Colombian journalist has gone a step further compared to all the other reports. Now, make of this what you will, yeah? What I'm going to say is that sometimes when these guys have more like personal relations with journalists in their own country, maybe at times they'd get more inside scoops that they reveal a bit earlier than traditional journalists from Europe. But again, I'm not too sure, because he says that we have reached an agreement to sign him for 50 million euros, which is around 42 million pounds. And at the moment, all we simply have to do now is reach personal terms with the player. Fair enough, but reports in Europe suggest that Aston Villa want between 40, but realistically 45 million to sell Jhon Duran. And for them, this is an amazing flip, because they signed him for I think 18-17 million pounds from Chicago Fire to get more than double for him when they need to sell so they can comply with profit and sustainability rules. Yeah, that could be a massive coup for them. But then I think to myself, with Aston Villa needing to sell before they can buy, we know that Douglas Luiz is set to go to Juventus. They know that they need to sell more players. Why do we have to agree to buy Jhon Duran for the fee Aston Villa want, when we have more negotiation power? No, we have more bargaining power. And I'd like to think that if we look to finalize this move, we're finalizing the move for the price we want to buy him for, which must be below this 40 million. It must have a lot of clauses included, like maybe goal bonuses in the future. I don't know, individual honors, accolades, international appearances, goals, etc., because for someone this young, for someone that hasn't necessarily played as much first team minutes too, it's crazy to think that he could cost more money than what we paid to buy Nicholas Jackson from Villarreal last summer, right? And I think ultimately too, we still don't know whether Conor Gallagher is interested in moving to Aston Villa. It will simply come down to how Unai Emery really gasses it and really sells the dreams to Conor. And they do have Champions League football to offer him. However, he may think him and his partner may be interested in leaving their life in London to go all the way up north to the Midlands. I'm not too sure, right? One thing I'm not comfortable with is the fact that we could be buying Jhon Duran for a similar fee in which we sell Conor Gallagher, even though he's now an England international. He was one of the top midfield players in the Prem last season. He's really grown in status. So it doesn't make sense that a guy that's still finding himself professionally could cost the same amount of money as someone who's only turned 24, is reaching a pre-peak stage and had the season he had last season. That doesn't add up for me. Now, my friends, let's move on to discussing why exactly we're after him, and I'll give my thoughts and opinions about how I feel about this news. But before I continue on, I want to quickly disclose this, but I feel like at times maybe people just call me Mr. Positivity, maybe too much, which I respect, because obviously I'm not here to just be like a negative guy 24/7, but I'm not here to be positive for the sake of it. Maybe it comes across as me being positive because maybe, I don't know, other content creators are a bit too negative, and it's making me look a lot more positive in relation, right? But I like to just look at stuff critically, and I try to be as subjective as I possibly can, which is hard for all of us, right? And I like to separate my personal thoughts and opinions on stories, on players, etc., away from why maybe the club could be making these moves. Because I think it's interesting for all of us to look outside our personal opinions to understand why clubs do the things they do. So I thought I'd just put that in there to try and give you guys a bit more clarity behind how I think, how I'm moving with these stories. But as I said, at the end of this video, I'll share my thoughts and opinions behind this. But right now, let's try to understand why the club have decided that Jhon Duran is the striker we want to sign. I think for a long time, we've wanted someone that can complement Nicholas Jackson in the sense that this striker brings in an additional attribute that we may lack. And I think one thing that's been quite obvious is that we don't necessarily have an elite aerial presence in our team. We don't necessarily have that extra dimension, which would probably help this team considering the creators we have. Players that can put in incredible deliveries inside the box from all angles. It's nice to have a different profile up front that is able to make contact with these balls, that can take advantage of a different attacking outlet, because in the Premier League sometimes there are times where you must be direct and you must go long, and we've struggled especially in these stages of games like this because we don't have the personnel. And if you look at the stats, statistically, Jhon Duran is one of the most promising aerial presences in the league. He wins nearly 4 headers per game. His heading success rate is around 69.2%. The scatter graph on screen reflects the fact that he contests a high volume of aerial headers and his success rate at winning them is pretty high, with his accuracy on goal really promising for his age. When you compare his scatter graph alongside the top 5 leagues in Europe, yeah, he looks even better, right? I mean, he's ranking higher than guys like Victor Boniface. Definitely better aerially compared to a Benjamin Sesko. Some good players who are very good at that side of the game, right? And the fact that at 20 years old, Duran is this promising in this area shows that with more refinement, more improvement over the seasons, he could be one of the most formidable type of advanced style forwards that could lead a line in the future. Yes, Duran has some really interesting attributes to his game. I mean, his ball striking, this guy is flipping like Hasselbank, this guy is like Adriano, this guy is like Forlan. I mean, this guy knows how to generate ridiculous power like nothing from the tiniest angles. So he's got some big promise there, and I can see why the scouts would have been enamored over this guy for like the past few seasons. If we use FBref, we can get maybe a deeper look behind individual statistics, but seeing pretty nice numbers, of course. It's 98th percentile for goals per 90, but obviously this stat doesn't really reflect too much because he hasn't really started too many games. He hasn't really played too many 90-minute games. So he is going to look a bit higher than the stats should actually suggest, right? But again, we look at other factors like his shooting, for example. Shot totals, it does show that this is a player that wants to take shots. But I'm going to give you guys additional context because sometimes stats don't paint the actual picture. Sometimes he shoots before he thinks, or he's shooting before he should release to a teammate. He shows a lot of that youthful inexperience, that youthful excitement, and that lack of a finishing touch and finesse with his thinking, right? So yeah, it's a nice stat that he can shoot from all angles, but this is something that must improve and get refined upon as seasons go on, right? But he is testing the goal a lot with his shots, which is obviously a nice statistic to see. The fact that he hasn't played many 90-minute games and he's ranking this high in the percentiles does show that he's quite accurate with his shooting at the moment, and he was known for his finishing ability within the Aston Villa players' ranks. Obviously, these are why things are showing the lack of experience in his game. Things like key passes where, at times, it's not like he's necessarily playing people in. He's the guy that's on the last lines waiting to be played in himself. So there is some context to consider when looking at certain stats like this, but I mention this because as fans, we can be very brutal and very impatient anytime we watch players play for us, no matter what age they're at, because every time we're investing minutes into watching our team, we want to see a win. So we scrutinize every detail from any player because we think to ourselves, it's these poor actions that are stopping us from getting where we need to be. Now, Jhon Duran also played as a winger growing up, so it's reflected in certain stats like his crossing. It means when he's out wide, he can find his teammates in the box, and it shows the variety in his game, so that is promising. But to continue on, we look at things like his goal and shot creating actions. He's ranking very high for defensive shot creating actions. And this actually links in very nicely to his defensive stats, because with defensive shot creating actions, it means this guy presses really well. He is forcing errors in the opponent's half. And when he does that, when he's counter pressing in that sense, he's creating shot creating actions. He's testing the goalkeeper, or his actions are leading to teammates having shots on goal. Now, it's not necessarily the highest actions per 90, because obviously he hasn't started too many games, but in his short amount of minutes that he got last season, he does show that he has been a very effective plan B option for Aston Villa, and he does create threats on that field. Because as I was saying, look at his defensive actions, like in his defensive third and the attacking thirds. You know, he's just someone that can help us defend set pieces, and he is someone that can help press the opposition, and he does his duties really, really well. I mean, these are great defensive numbers for a forward, right, that you like to turn to. But obviously, he can refine things in his possession game. I think his carrying could be a lot better. I think he gets dispossessed at times a bit too easily. He's a willing, progressive carrier, but the efficiency rate isn't always there at times. But with more minutes, more time, parts and details like this can be refined. And again, things like tackles won, penalty kicks won, aerials won. I mean, 62% in the Prem is that's a big number for his age, and attempting nearly 4 a game. Yeah, that's mad. So you can see the potential around a Jhon Duran. But for the final part of this video, are we making the best move in spending what's set to be quite a lot of money on a player that essentially we're signing as plan B? Now, on one hand, this is great news for Nicholas Jackson. I think Nicholas Jackson is someone where with another 1 to 2 more seasons, he could be a very good striker, a top striker, because I've always believed in his natural talent, his play outside of goal scoring, and obviously the things he creates for the team and how he plays with his teammates. So he'll feel confident thinking, I can beat this guy to first team minutes. And for games where he has to be rested, Duran could be an interesting option we turn to that provides maybe more power, more directness in terms of how his teammates find him. But equally at the same time, with all these talks suggesting that everything's title challenge, I'm sorry, someone like a Jhon Duran isn't going to become one of the top leading strikers in the Prem in the space of 12 months. He's not going to have a Cole Palmer impact. I think he is someone that if you're deciding to buy, you're investing at least 3 seasons minimum, because he's that type of striker. Would I have necessarily signed him? No. I think when you have these types of ambitions, sometimes play the long game and wait for opportunities in following windows. But then with a club like us, with the type of funds that we have, you think to yourself, is any player really here? Other than a few key players, I think everyone could be sold under the right circumstances. And maybe we'd be well, if Sechko has another amazing season next season, we'll cough up the money and we'll just sell someone, because it's pretty easy for us to move like that. The club may think financially it's worth this investment because Jhon Duran isn't on a big contract. He can probably sign for terms that we want over 7 years, right? So this player cost can get spread out quite simply, quite easily. And we still don't know yet whether we will pay the 45 million, because I'd imagine we like to buy him for a much more reduced fee. Do we have the firepower to be mounting title challenges? No, I think it's all cap, in my opinion. We have to wait and see how we even perform under Maresca. We haven't seen things yet. Maresca, even though he has potential, he's still quite new in the managerial game. Let's hope he gets on well with the team. Let's hope that things do work out in our favor. But you just thought that maybe this summer, we might maybe invest a little bit in players who are maybe a little bit more ready at the moment to aid alongside players we already have at this club. There's big pressure, there's big expectations to place, knowing the fact that the following summer after this one, we got even more young guys coming in. It's great that we're building a team for tomorrow, but it just feels like, are we maybe placing, are we just too aggressive in building for tomorrow? Is our plan really to be let's get this team playing together? When Pep Guardiola leaves Man City, finally they'll be there for the taking and we'll be ready. That could be the play. Maybe this is why we're doing everything we're currently doing. But, is he necessarily the type of forwards that is going to help towards making us a better team? I'm not inclined to maybe think so, but then equally, I'm not stupid and I'm always open to having my opinions changed, because listen, I'm a YouTuber. I'm not a football expert. I know my place in the food chain, right? But I just felt like this summer we'd maybe be a bit more ambitious and a bit more wiser in terms of the striker we looked to recruit. I guess the Seshko thing was a big blow, but he's always there next season. And you think, you know, with Nicholas Jackson and Kunku arriving, because then Kunku can play up front at times. I don't get why people think that he could not be an option he would turn to. With the fact that Broja is still here, you know, Dacha Fofana, are they not worth investing into at the moment as we prepare to spend big and spend correct the following summer, similar to what clubs like Arsenal and Liverpool have been, you know, really profiting from over the past few seasons? So I'm not too sure. Should the barrier of entry to sign for us not be a little bit higher? Should we not be expecting Jhon Duran to have played a consistent season over like 1 or 2 seasons first? I mean, look at Seshko. I would have been open to even signing him this summer, even though I was thinking deep in my head, realistically, I'd want him to be like the leading scorer in Germany. I'd want him to be the consistent #1 throughout the entirety of a whole season before we spend the money we spend on him. I feel like sometimes with potential, that's good, but a lot of times why kids can fail at times is that they weren't mentally ready. They don't have enough mental confidence in their game. I think Jhon Duran has confidence in abundance. I think he does, but when you're going to a club like us with the pressure, expectations from everyone, owners, the flipping fans, we are not the best fans. Let's keep things real. We are not the most patient fans. You know, he misses 1 or 2, 3 blunders. You're going to see all the memes, you're going to see the criticism, and this is where you're really building yourself up, and this is where you're really proving, do you have the mental strength to play for us? A lot of our players last season suffered. Pochettino even explained this as well. And I just think to myself, when there's so much like abundance and just going for like great potential at their formative years, is it just not a bit too much at times? Or is it simply the fact that we have the money to experiment to see how these things play out? And if it doesn't work, I'll be rich enough to just say goodbye. Here's a loan, here's a move away, on to the next one. Maybe, but then I'm not gonna lie, I think it's a bit soulless at times on a different note. But my friends, that is my conversation on Jhon Duran. Share your thoughts and opinions. I'm kind of like freestyling here. I'm kind of thinking about a lot of things, and I think with how we do business, it's kind of hard for me not to try and see what angle's right. But you guys know my takes, you know my thoughts and opinions. We all want to know yours. Let us know in the comments. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is BlueLionsTV. See you guys all soon. Cool.